Shabbat Shalom. We're going to continue with our meditations on this Shabbat. We're actually going to be looking at a review of the themes that the Most High has given to us since 2019 and how all of those themes, which are given on an annual basis for the entire calendar year, all of those themes dovetail into what the Most High's will is for us as his people. What we're looking at is the point in time that we are currently living, how that there is a truth that the Most High wants his children and the rest of the world to know. And so that's what this presentation is going to be about. The Most High has never stopped communicating with his children. He's never stopped communicating with his representatives to the rest of the world. He has continually given a vision of the will of the kingdom of heaven for us as human beings. And part of that will has been delivered through the people that he identified as Israel or Yasharel. So we've been on this for a while. That's what this presentation is going to bring together so that we can understand how things are now. Just so that we're clear, we're living in a very chaotic moment in time. The chaos is not going to last forever. It's for a purpose, and the purpose, depending on whether or not we're children of the Most High or children of that which is against the Most High, we are literally looking at the fulfillment of what was given to the woman and the serpent in Genesis chapter 3, where the seed of the woman has been bruised by the seed of the serpent, and the seed of the serpent is about to be bruised by the seed of the woman. That's what all this is about. And it has been spoken of by many prophets, evangelists, teachers. So in this particular Shabbat meditation, we're just going to be looking at how that has played itself out in the life and teaching of some of the Most High's people. So let's just go ahead and get started. The sub-theme has to do with what the Most High's will is for the people that are called by his name. We're talking about, again, the children of Israel, the children of Yasharel. We're talking about the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They play a particular role in this saga between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. The children of Yasharel are part of the seed of the woman, but there's always the seed of the serpent. So when Yasharel came out of Egypt, they went to Mount Sinai, and Moses was given some instructions from on high to the rest of his people. And that's what this slide is about. But we're going to go down to the bottom of the slide in Exodus chapter 20, verses 2 and 3. This is what the children of Israel were told. The Most High gave these instructions. I'm Yahuwah, your Elohim. You shall have no other Elohim before me. And in the Hebrew, God and gods are the same word. So that's why I use the word Elohim. So if we go up to the definition from Strong, Elohim is a plural Hebrew word. The definition is gods in the ordinary sense, but specifically used in the plural, thus especially with the article of the supreme God, occasionally applied by way of deference to magistrates, sometimes as a superlative. It has applied to angels, great judges, mighty people on the earth. So that anytime the scriptures use Elohim, the people who were a part of the culture that these testimonies, these stories emanated, understood Elohim to be that. So in our day and time, when we see God, we have assigned a personality and a meaning for the capital G as being the one and only God. But in actuality, the way that the people understood it at the time that these things were recorded and given first by a mouth to ear, so to speak, they understood God to be a plurality. Okay. And then they also understood that Elohim is a plural of Eloha, and Aloha means a deity or a god. Okay. So getting back to Exodus chapter 20, the Most High said, I'm Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall have no other Elohim before me. And then he also said in the second so-called second commandment, you shall not make any graven images of anything in heaven, on the earth, or under the earth, or in the waters. And you shall not bow yourself down to them or serve them, because I am jealous. All right. So we're going to be talking about that too. But bowing down and worshiping God, there are different ways of doing that. You can worship God out of love and adoration, which is the one that we're most familiar with. You can also worship God out of fear of reprisal. You can worship God out of ignorance, and you can worship God out of reverence. So all those different ways of worship apply. If you look up the word worship, it literally means to bow down. So it's bowing down to something, or deferring. That's the word I was looking for. Deferring to something that is greater or outside of oneself. Okay. So that's the context of worship. The reason we're looking at this is so that we can understand the mind of the people who heard about worship. And more specifically, the reason we're looking at it is because that is actually what's going on in this last time. We're looking at the ramifications of people who are worshiping whatever God that is being worshiped. There's something that's implied with that, because when you look at those definitions again, what you see is that we can worship out of love, we can worship out of fear of reprisal, we can worship that which we don't know about, and we can also worship out of reverence. So with that being the case, one of the things that's implied is you don't have to have a God that you like. This is a very important dynamic that we are dealing with in this day and time, especially those who are called by the name of the Most High. Okay, because we all, talking about the children of Yasharel, especially in this society, we all have come up in a society that has imposed its will upon us. And in many cases, we must do what that society said under fear of death. So we have had to genuflect, if you will. We have had to give deference to people who, in essence, are our enemies. Okay, so we're just going to continue with that thought for a little bit. Again, worship means to bow down to someone or something. It doesn't necessarily have to have a positive implication. So you can bow down in reverence and love. You can bow down in fear and loathing. And in either case, the object of that worship becomes the focal point for how those who are giving the worship live their daily life, which means that you can have an enemy and have to worship that enemy, or you can have an attitude of worship towards your enemy. It doesn't have to be toward that which you like or respect. It can, in a positive sense, you can actually have worship for your enemy. So worshiping your enemy means that everything you do, everything you think, both positively and negatively, is in relationship to how your enemy views you. Now, I'm using the word enemy purposefully because it has a lot of implications. But another word for that, it would be your oppressor. And in the culture of the United States of America, it could be the relationship between those who were the enslavers and those who were the enslaved, because our people have been in the category of those who are enslaved, and our enslavers are our enemies. They were our enemies then, they're our enemies now. So anyone who has that as an understanding has already expanded what worshiping God can mean. Now, when we worship God the Father, we're asking in worship, what does the Most High think about me? What does the Most High think about my actions? Because my desire is to want to please the God of creation. That's from the positive. But the same thing can happen from the negative concerning how we worship our enemies. What does my enemy think about me and my actions? So both of those have been our reality as the Most High's people. Okay, now I'm going to cover this. This is where we're going to spend a little bit of time, but I think I need to spend a little bit more time on this concept of worship, because here's the contention for this particular meditation. The Most High's people have been living in a society that despises them and have developed a culture based on how they are seen by those who have been told that they should be the enslavers and the Most High's people should be the enslaved. So all of the cultural activities are based around this system of worship. The premise is faulty, but that does not mean it is not real. That means, or that it does not have with it a reality contained therein. And so even when we talk about going to church, just because you're in a physical location where your enemy may not physically be with you, your enemy spiritually and your enemy psychologically goes to church with you. So the things that you think about what's going on in the church are still colored by the God that you brought in there with you. And the God that the Most Highest people in this country overwhelmingly worship is a God that's worshiped out of fear. It's a God that does not look like us. It's a God that does not act like us. It is a God that has expectations for us that if we do not fulfill, that God will destroy us. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that. But now that God, talking about the God of white supremacy, so that we are all on the same page, the God of white supremacy has a God also in this country. All right. The God of white supremacy is on the currency that they operate with. That's why it says, in God we trust. That's the God of this nation. The God of this nation is Mammon. The God of this nation has always been Mammon. And Mammon is served when you have a system that exploits one group of people so that a much smaller group of people can flourish and prosper. That is the culture of what we call the United States of America, and the God of the United States of America is the almighty dollar. So in this day and time, that God is adored, that God is reverenced, that God is loved, and that God rules over all other gods. And that God has stewards over this nation. Those stewards became the oppressors of my people, because in order for that God to and those who worship that God to flourish, they had to have a permanent underclass that they would stand on and build their society on. So that's what this society is built on. Now, so you've got these two people groups primarily, and we could go into a year-long study on unpacking that. But for the purposes of this meditation, we want to at least at this point in time understand the real dynamic of this country, which is, and you'll see why I'm bringing that up when we go to this next slide. Okay. So what I just said is the real United States of America. The United States of America, in order for that God to be served, has to use lies and deceit and brute force to maintain that order. So the default position of the United States of America is one of perpetuating lies. And one of the lies that is perpetuated, one of the biggest lies, is that this is a godly nation. Godly nations don't act like this nation acts. So, and not only that, that would be the case anywhere else in the world. I'm sort of getting ahead of this next slide, but that's what in this last day, the Most High is making plain so that everybody can see. This is probably a good time to go to the next slide. In the process of all of this, the Most High has a will. His will is being carried out. His will be carried out. His will shall be carried out by the people who are called by his name. Because regardless of what we think, there is a righteousness that will exalt any nation that finds itself in the will of the Most High. Let's look at how this has been playing itself out over the past, almost 7 years, I guess. The Most High has always had witnesses to himself. That's who Yasharel as a nation was supposed to be. Yasharel as a nation was supposed to be the Most High's witness to the rest of the world, so that the rest of the world could see what the Most High has for that which he has created. Yasharel was never supposed to be the only repository of the will of the Most High, but Yasharel was supposed to be the point of contact for the rest of the world to see what the will of the Most High was, based on what heaven said, not based on an earthly understanding. Okay, so the Most High has always had witnesses. Now, if you're talking about in the Christian church, that's where your preachers, your teachers, your evangelists, all of those people, that's where they come in. That's really the purpose of all of those quote unquote fivefold ministries. That in and of itself was not supposed to be the making up of a religion. It was supposed to be the way that the Most High got his will into the hearts and minds of those in his creation. But he always does what he does with humankind through people, through other humans. That's why Yeshua had to come, but I'm getting ahead of it. But in any case, so as a Sunday school teacher, as a layman Bible teacher, the Most High would give me annual themes that would guide the study or the teaching for a particular calendar year. So back in 2019, there was this theme that the Most High gave that had actually been coming up from the people of the Most High that didn't actually even know that they were a people. That theme had been, you are actually the children of Yasharel. You have been in captivity and all of that goes along with it for 400 years, just like I told Abraham would happen, even though some people believe that prophecy was talking about the children of Yasharel in Egypt, but the children of Yasharel weren't in Egypt for 400 years under an oppressive state. It was less than 250 years. So that particular prophecy in Genesis chapter 15, the Most High was beginning to show his nation, your 400 years are up. And that happened in 2019. That became the theme. And in that theme, that's when the Most High's people were being awakened to the fact. Now, again, this was happening several years before, but by this time in 2019, the people of the book were being identified as the people of the book. And we were also being told that the time of the Gentiles, and all of us thought that's who we were, but that the time of the Gentiles, the real Gentiles, was coming to an end, and that the time of our deliverance was at hand. That message started becoming more and more prevalent in 2019. In 2020, the message was it's going to get bumped. And that played itself out in what we now know as that pandemic. And part of that pandemic was shutting down the society. Part of the society that was shut down was the church. And the Most High told us in the church why that was happening. It was because we were not being effective in the work of the ministry that he gave the church to do. The church had become useless for his purposes. So he just shut the whole thing down. And now, as that time has moved on, there are people who are trying to reestablish that old order. That's not going to work for those who may be wanting to do that. Those were landmarks we weren't supposed to have in the first place. Okay, we weren't supposed to come together to do church. We were supposed to be the church that came together for the purpose of doing the will of the Most High. And most of the doing of the will of the Most High happens outside of the four walls of churches, and certainly not just on Sunday morning or Wednesday Bible study. Okay, so he shut all that down. And then what he did was to use and utilize the current technology to still meet the needs of his people and to still get his word out. That's how everybody got on social media. And that's why social media was being used. Okay. So the Most High's will never stopped. That foolishness that we had that foolish rut that we were in, and a rut is a grave with two ends dug out. Okay, that foolish rut that we were in, that's what will stop. And so again, if you find yourself in that rut in 2024, my recommendation is follow the directive and the direction that the Most High is giving his people, because at this point in time, his people know this. Okay, and his people are beginning to move the way that he wants us to move. All right, so that going to get bumpy, it also included what our enemy's desire was. See, we've always had an enemy, y'all. Listen to this. And it has nothing to do with skin color. Let me say that during this presentation also. This has to do with which God we're serving. Okay, so that skin color has been exploited by the enemy, and it is morphed into what we call white supremacy, but it's much deeper than that. Okay, but that enemy does have a plan for this planet, just like the Most High does. The Most High's plan for the planet is to save it, okay, from complete destruction. The plan of the enemy is to destroy the society. And so part of that destruction is the culling of the population. That's what the enemy was going to do and is still planning on doing with that pandemic. The pandemic was a pilot program, if you will. Now that things have progressed, you're going to see the enemy of mankind moving in a much more purposeful way, a much more controlling way to cull the population. It's not going to just be about Black folk being oppressed anymore, and you're beginning to see that. But in 2020, the Most High was telling us then, as His people, it's going to get bumpy. Now, the other part that's not here is, but I got you. Okay, that's an important part that I should have listed on the screen. Okay, now in 2021, what He told us was stay the course. I gave you an assignment. Do your assignment. You have seen correctly that you are the people. You have seen correctly that the time of the Gentiles is over and the time of your deliverance is at hand. And now I've given you a period of readjustment. So now that you have been readjusted, move in the direction that I gave you to move. Well, what is that? In 2022, He made it more plain. He said, I want you to go repair the breach. What is the breach? The breach is the hedge of protection around the Most High's kingdom, the Most High's people, because the Most High's people are His kingdom. And so our job was to, first of all, understand that we had a kingdom, that we were in a kingdom. It was destroyed because of our unbelief, if you will. And now that we have been in captivity and have been delivered, He's going to take us right back to do what we should have been doing all along. So in order to do that, all of the ramifications of the destruction of our society, we need to rebuild that. Okay, so repair the breach, go back and rebuild. And part of that is walking around the Most High's people, walking around the heritage of the Most High, which is His people, and rebuilding that wall. What is the wall? He told us the wall is the leadership that He has placed in the community. This is an area that I don't think we've talked enough about. The Most High is orderly. Everything that He does with His people, He has assigned servants, stewards, if you will, of His purpose for His people. Those are the leaders, okay? And part of what we are seeing, and what part of what we did see, even back as far as 2019, is the leadership in our nation, in our communities, is dysfunctional. Because the leadership is dysfunctional, that's why the jackals and the dogs and the enemy in general can come against us, because there's nobody on post. The people who would be leaders are too busy arguing with one another. And in case you didn't know it, that's how Jerusalem got destroyed when the Romans destroyed it. The Romans actually were not stronger than the children of Yasharel. The Romans were able to sack Jerusalem because Yasharel was fighting itself on the inside of those walls. So what we were to do in 2022 is to go back to that foundation, rebuild that foundation, which includes leadership. So now what we should be doing, even in this day and time, is acknowledging who the Most High's real leaders are, and then putting ourselves in subjection to that leadership, because He has a plan. It's not that the leaders are the only ones with the plan, but as He has a plan, He always has someone to execute that plan. Okay, so that was what we were told in 2022. In 2023 and 2024, we were told what we were actually rebuilding. We're rebuilding a nation, not a church. We're rebuilding a nation. The concept of church is that which the Most High wants us to lay aside, because we have created that church in our image and after our likeness. He can't work with that, because when we're doing that, we don't see that we're a nation. We think that we're just a bunch of individuals. So our job is to acknowledge first that the Most High's people are a nation. They're not a religious organization. And in that nation is comprised of tribes. So if you know that you are a nation comprised of tribes, one of the tasks is to find yours, find your tribe, and then use the identifiers that the Most High gives you. So those who believe in and follow the Most High's word are his people, and in those groups of people you will find your tribe. You can't find your tribe among your enemy. Your enemy is not your tribe. And again, I'm not talking about skin color. That's where that idea of all kinfolk are not skin folk. We have enemies that look just like us, and most of this last half century, it's those people who have been in positions of leadership. That's why our community is in the situation that it's in. Those people are not obligated to us. Those people do not work for us. Those people work for the people who pay for them to be in those positions. So unless our community actually paid for those people, they're not our people. But we do have people, and this is the time that we should be identifying those people using the same criteria that 2 Timothy chapter 3 and 1 Timothy chapter 3 talk about, which is the qualifications for an elder. Those are the types of people that the Most High wants as the leaders. And it's always the people that that those who qualify have been working with and among. The people already know who our leaders are. They already know. What the Most High is saying is, if you use my blueprint, you find your tribe, and in those tribes you will find your leaders, and that's how you will begin to build a nation. Now we get to for those who will continue to the theme for 2025. There is another sign marking a major shift in the spirit world, and please listen to this and meditate on it. Remember that scripture in Revelation that said, he who lets until he's taken away. Okay, in other words, there are angels in the four winds right now that they are already there. Okay, and they have been told up to this point in time, it's not time yet. I don't want you coming down here, because when they come, you're not going to be able to stop them. I don't care how deep your bunker is, they will find you. Here's the theme for this coming year, and probably more than just this coming year. The hand of restraint has gone down, and those angels are coming. The harvest has begun. That is the theme. The Most High is sending his angels to begin the harvesting and the separation of the good seed from the evil seed. Now, what is being talked about? That's in the Gospel of Luke, where it talks about the parable of the sowing of the good seed and the sowing of the tares. It's the parable of the wheat and the tares. We are in that time. What time? If you remember the parable, the Most High disciples, or those who were working in the vineyard, told the master of the vineyard, we went out to the field and there were tares sown among the wheat. Didn't you sow good seed? Remember that parable? Well, somebody sowed something else, because there's good seed and bad seed, which is describing the world that we're living in right now. Okay. And the Most High said, an enemy has done this. And so the disciples said, or the servants said, well, do you want us to go pluck up the tares? And he said, no, let them grow together, or else when you pluck up the tares, you might pluck up the wheat too. This is a metaphor for how we are to operate. Yasharel, listen to me. Stop trying to pull up tares. That's not your job. The Most High did not tell all these so-called prophets to be telling people that they're going to hell. What we're supposed to be doing is following the blueprint. And the blueprint says, get yourself together. The blueprint says, work on the beam that's in your eye. Then if somebody needs your help to take a speck out of theirs, you'll be able to see. There's too many people calling themselves by the name of the Most High who can't see their own beam, but they can see somebody's speck perfectly. And so all of our time is spent debunking one another, showing how one another is ignorant, showing how one another does not have the intellectual capacity that I have, showing that if you don't listen to me, you couldn't possibly know what you're talking about. All of that being done among church folk and Hebrew Israelites is what the Most High shut the church down for. We need to stop that. He's already given us an assignment. We need to be thinking about, what does it look like to have a functioning, vibrant community? That's what the good seed produces. But what the theme is the angels are coming now. They're doing the separating. We're going to be separated. It's just that we don't do that. That is above our pay grade. What we do is what he tells us to do. Envision the world that I have for you, because you're going to be running it. See, everybody's waiting to go to heaven. The kingdom of heaven, as the scripture said about Yeshua, is among you and is here. So the kingdom of heaven is what is about to manifest itself in its fullness. At the very least, y'all, that's 1,000 years. So there's a lot that we should be doing and can be doing that has nothing to do with trying to make some other grown person be and do what my image of them is. Again, the Most High did not tell any of us to do that. And I know it's very easy to do. It's much easier to recognize the faults of other people than it is to repent of your own sin. But in this time, and as we continue to build upon the blueprint that he's given us, he's not telling us to spend all this time debunking folks or talking about, see, I told you that preacher wasn't right. First of all, do you go? Never mind. Let me stop. All right. So that's the blessing of how the Most High has been working just through this one servant. Okay. Since 2019, there have always been given themes to guide the meditation, themes to guide the study. And anyone who is interested in that is certainly encouraged to pursue it as well. But what I do know is that I didn't come up with these themes, okay? Which means that if this comes from heaven, there are lots of other people who are saying the exact same thing. So it's not that we don't need validation. The Father will validate himself. But what he wants us to know and to understand is he will never leave us. He will never forsake us. He will always give us instructions on how to live, how to move, and to how to have our being. And why? It's because he loves us. And he wants us to show the love that he has shown us to others. And so we can't do that if our minds are all cloudy with the things of this satanic system that he's calling us out of. So the word that hasn't been mentioned, but it is a reality, is he still wants us to come out of Babylon. Babylon is fallen. And that reality is going to take care of itself. We don't have to do anything about it. We just have to come out of it. And what do we do instead? He's already laid that out. So that's what we have for our understanding on this Shabbat. Father, bless you and keep you. Father, make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. Father, lift up his countenance upon